Hi there, and welcome to this week's feedback session. So this week we were working with grids, and I did a demonstration showing how grids are excellent for taking on quite complex subjects. And I mean, they can be useful for transferring sketches and all sorts of uses. There's something that require a bit of practice. So with all of my students, I try to every now and again encourage you to practice with a grid because you never know when it might, sometimes it can be the solution to a problem. You have something to paint, it's very challenging and you're not quite sure how to go about it. So just having grids and being familiar with them is a useful skill. As I think my students have found out, and as I'm well aware, a grid doesn't actually solve all the problems for you. You know, it won't in itself make for a great painting. However, it is a tool, one among many, and if used well, it can give really good effects. So I also talked about using distortion grids. So there are some avenues that are available to you when you work with grids. You can either disguise them and rub them out, or you can actually make them integral to your design and actually make them sort of stand out. Or in my case, I drew mine in red and left it there. So yeah, so there's lots of different ways of working with them. I'm really pleased to say I've had a few pieces handed in this week. So we're going to go over to Photoshop and have a look. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and Alison sent this one in, and we can see some of her gridding going on there. And excellent choice of subject. Okay, so boats, things that have quite challenging perspective, you know, they can give you a lot of difficulties just trying to eyeball them and get them accurate. As you will discover, you know, your mind will play lots of tricks on you and distortion. So taking on a subject like a boat was a really good choice there, Alison, I think. And what I like is, although it's a very accurate drawing, actually the pastel marks, it gives it a rough sort of handmade feel, so it's not overly laboured. So I really like that combination of accuracy and sort of looseness at the same time. So very nice, Alison, good stuff. And then she also sent me in this one. Again, really nice. So again, just using the grid here really to get the ball rolling. So you can see it is a very accurate drawing of a poppy head, and yet it's still got that sort of roughness and energy of a sketch. Okay, so it's very easy to tighten up when you use a grid, but that's not really what I would suggest. I would then go back to, you know, some of our lessons we did on mark making, and just sort of enjoy, you know, creating sort of nice rough marks. And in a way you sort of disguise the accuracy of your drawing by using sort of rougher, more sort of like gestural marks over the top. Anyway, very nice study there, Alison, thank you. And Jen sent this one in. So she sent me in a couple of stages. So here we can see the image gridded up. And so this was the sort of thing I was talking about, taking on a complex subject. So certainly when you have a scene that has lots of people all in the same frame, you know, you've got several portraits there, and there's perspective. The gridding is a great tool. So there's lots of interest there. So it's a good choice of reference. And then she developed it there. With looks like the graphite wash or watercolor. So yeah, very nice. I guess just from a personal point of view, I would probably encourage maybe to go a little bit more contrasty with the darks. So if I just increase the contrast there, I mean, that's just a personal thing. You probably will have gauged this. I quite like, I think when you're working black and white, I think it's nice to get those darks dark. Okay, and yeah, so sometimes you can also create depth by making the darks in the foreground, like under this character and around this chair. You could make these all darker, and then the background darks maybe not quite so dark, and that can also help suggest depth. But yeah, very nice study, Jen. And let's have a look. Oh, and she also did this one. So this is great. So she's having to go at the distortion grid here, and we can see the fisheye lens. okay, which is again where you sort of curve the lines round, and you get this distorted look. So it starts to make the image feel almost slightly surreal or magical or sort of visionary almost. And there we can see she's turned it into something like a tonal thumbnail sketch. So again, that's nice. The darks of the foreground figures push the background back. So yeah, excellent work there, Jen. Very good. I mean, all of these could be developed a bit further, I think. These are almost like thumbnails preparatory drawings. And that's good. But you could say, you could take the idea maybe a bit further and do something a bit more finished if you felt inclined. Okay, and then let's have a look. So Lindsay had to go, these two Japanese ladies, and this is her drawing. So this is really nice to see. She's gone straight in for a distortion grid, and she was talking about Giacometti, and Giacometti created these very thin, elongated figures, sculptural. And that sort of stretching of the figure creates a very sort of elegant, sort of tall, refined sort of look. So you can see the original, they're sort of quite squat. And there it's made the proportions feel quite different. So I think that was a really nice idea, Lindsay. And I look forward to seeing the finished piece. Let's see, Lois had to go. This is what I was suggesting. You can find nice reference in magazines, very sort of, you know, things that you might just pass over, could make good subjects. So we've got a nice interior scene there. And there she's done it on graph paper. So that really is useful. And she's done it, you know, as I suggested, a nice tonal, dark, mid-value and light. So I think that works really nicely with that, Lois. Thank you. And then she's had to go at this more complex street scene. So we've got lettering, we've got perspective, figures getting from large to small in the distance. And let's see how she got. Now, I think this works really nicely. She was saying that she wasn't, she mentioned not being very pleased with it, but I think this works really well. Let's just have a look at the, so just go to black and white. Okay, so the buildings I think the buildings I would have as mid-value. Maybe everything I would have as mid-value apart from the sky. So that's just how I would develop it further. And just as a little reminder, just with these buildings, let's just go a bit smaller. Okay, those lines there at the tops of the windows, they need to be, they are sort of, they're on the building. They also need to adhere to the perspective. And so you get a slight distortion if they're not accurately drawn. So let me just draw it in red pen. Okay, maybe even smaller still, but you get the gist. They also need to go down in the same diagonal. Okay, so you just need to be aware of it when you are drawing. But no, look at the figures, they're excellent, nice sort of negative sort of shapes with the legs and a sensation of depth. So yeah, I think that's very nice. Good basis for a painting as well, that one. So I like that. Margaret had to go at Distortion Grid, but she wasn't overly happy with the results. Maybe there's not enough visual information there, Margaret. That might be a possibility. I quite like all the distorted angles, but I say it's like with mine. I think when you do the distortion, you probably want to do either don't do distortion, or if you do it, sort of make it obvious. I think maybe here the distortion's a bit too subtle, and therefore it's difficult to read it as you know, as a distortion grid. But you know, those are just things to consider. I think the beach huts, I'm sure there would be some good subjects there that would lend themselves to this exercise. I do like though, Margaret, I think this is good. You see this shadow that you've got inside suggesting depth on the roof. I just thought that's a very nice observation there. So that gives, you know, that works really well. So thanks for that, Margaret. Now, Mary sent some work in, which is I was really pleased to see, and she's done an excellent study here of a street scene, and I think, yeah, this works a treat. So let's just sort of have a look at the reference. Okay, so if I squint my eyes, what I sort of become very conscious of is the foreground building I would locate, I would sort of have that as dark. Okay, so with this area here, let's just okay, so I want to darken that a bit. Okay, then if we go back there, okay, that's dark and that's mid. I think that's probably the main suggestion I would have for you, Mary. Maybe these buildings in the background, you know, have them just a touch darker. So this is why you don't want to be too subtle with your tonal values. So you see there, so what I'm trying to do there is use sort of darker shapes in the foreground. So like, let's go, make that darker. You see, having that darker pushes those back, and certainly darkening the foreground. Okay, so I think the drawing was excellent, and I like the way you put the tones in. But yeah, that's what I would do. Is again, it's that ability to sort of simplify the tonal values. Those are just suggestions. Because if we go back to the original, you know, I think it works really nice. But as I say, by having that foreground building quite light, you also tend to draw attention to it. If I go back, then our eye tends to, our eye will go through past the building because it's in shadow and through to the interest maybe in the background. Okay, so yeah, mainly my suggestions would be on a tonal basis there, Mary. But thanks for handing those in. And Melanie sent in, so she was looking, she did a master copy, which is an excellent thing to do with a grid. Really helps you to sort of look at an artist's work and sort of try to sort of see through their eyes. So she's done Picasso there. This is her version, which again, very nice, I thought. She managed to get the look. I think this is it for these absinthe drinkers, sort of meant to look slightly sort of dazed and confused, and those bright colours in the background. So yeah, very nice. Yeah, I really like that period of Picasso's work. I think it's that Rose period maybe, but yeah, very good. So maybe I would have, again, probably just, you know, the reds are great. I would have maybe tried to get the darks a bit darker. Okay, that's the only thing. You see there again, the red acts like a mid value basically. So you've got a mid value, darks of the black, darks of the hair, and then a little bit of light on the face. So the light on the face really sort of zings because it's surrounded by dark. So by keeping these darks a bit lighter, you don't perhaps get that sort of tonal impact. So that's just a suggestion there. And Phil, so Phil had to go at this. He was actually in my Woodbridge Melton class on Wednesday and tackling this subject. So really like this subject, and he's sort of playing with monochrome, although there's a little bit of colour in there. And it was an excellent subject because, you know, lettering in perspective is a really difficult thing to just to draw it by eye and get it accurate. So good choice of subject. And he did really, you know, he struggled a bit and persevered and managed to get a good result with these letters. I think the takeaway point, though, is when you have lettering, certainly lettering in perspective, and you're trying to get that right, then it's worth making your grid perhaps a few squares smaller, you know, or putting those X's in. Anything to help you with your drawing accuracy will help. And we talked a little bit, I think there was, we were talking about making these foreground, this is a boat beside another big boat. So making these foreground elements also maybe a bit darker, because say the darks that are closest to you will tend to be the darkest darks. So there are still a few little things that could be improved on that one. But yeah, great subject, Phil. So very good. Sarah sent these in. Let's turn this round. So really nice study here. Again, she's taken on a very complex scene. Looks like it, I don't know if that's Venice. Possibly these like archers look a bit like Venice maybe. And she's used her grid to great effect. Very accurate, very nice, accurate drawing. So I like that. It's good work, Sarah. And she's done another one. Okay, so these were like, she was a bit, unfortunately, a bit pushed for time this week. So these are all great preparations. These are like laying down the sort of bones, the bare bones of a composition. So then the next question is maybe tone, or, you know, like Alison at the beginning, are you going to sort of like, once you've got your accurate drawing, you can then be a bit looser and relaxed with how you apply colour or tone. But anyway, great start, and it looks like you've got the hang of it. Also, I really like the fact you've got your perspective, first point perspective grid there, which again just shows that you've absorbed that idea. And that view of looking down paths, I think is, I was out painting today, and actually I chose looking down a path. So it's just really nice to sort of pull your eye in. So yeah, good stuff. And let's see, Stuart. Again, excellent study here, taking on something nice and tricky and applying a bit of colour. And I think that works really well. Again, maybe some darker darks in the foreground might help to push everything back. But yeah, I like that one. However, Stuart also sent this one in, and I think, you know, from a drawing point of view, I prefer this one. I think, you know, again, very difficult subject, looking up and all that detail, but he's managed to suggest the detail without, you know, a great deal of sort of fuss. But, you know, because the grid has helped him, yeah, it's just an excellent, you know, it would be the basis of a great painting, or, you know, you could go into it with a bit more tone. If I was working on it, let's see, I would probably make the whole, I'd make that whole clock just a little bit darker. So I missed a little bit there, but you see that, Stuart? So again, that means we just separate the church, or the tower, from the sky. And I think just laying down perhaps another wash of graphite or some sort of tone would actually create perhaps a stronger graphic effect. But yeah, excellent work. So yeah, nice to see that you've got the hang of the grids. Okay, so we've got this one from Debbie, and I think Debbie did a great job here. Now, she was saying she was a bit disappointed with the red grid with felt tip, that it sort of bled a bit and maybe created a bit of a pinkish hue. But I think, I mean, I quite like the effect. I think it works really nicely. It actually sort of helps to unify the drawing. But yeah, I particularly like the use of text in here. And so we get some interest in terms of the buildings and the signs. And I think text in a drawing just adds a really nice sort of graphic quality, makes it quite different. Nice sense of perspective here. And yeah, it's got quite a sort of fun sort of feel about it. So I really like that. But of course, the drawing is nice and solid, you know, as a result, well, maybe as a result of using the grid. So we still have that nice sense of depth and recession, with the big building, big people in the front, and then these smaller buildings in the distance. So yeah, I think that was a really nice one, Debbie. Thanks for that. Teresa. So here's Teresa. She's doing this portrait. So again, here we've got a double portrait with a beach scene. So very tricky, challenging subject. And I think she's doing this as a commission. And she's working on her pastels, and this is how far she's got with it so far. So there we go. Let's get in a bit closer here. And you can see she's got the grid on this girl's face. So again, this is the idea of, you know, doubling up the squares. When you've got a lot of detail, you can double up the squares. But as you can see, Teresa, she's excellent at rendering. Once she's got her drawing in, she's very good at rendering the details, excellent color accuracy, and all that drawing really comes into play. So these nice warm and cool tones of the water work really well. And I'm sure the result will be, you know, excellent when she finishes it. For those of you that are watching, and it's Friday, what would it be? Friday the 28th. Teresa's also got a show on this week in Felixstowe. So I will pop the details below if you're interested in that. Anyway, so some excellent work this week, and it's just nice to see people starting to work with the grid. You know, as I say, it's something that, you know, you develop it. It's not like something that you pick it up once and that's done. And certainly when you start to work bigger, it's something that I heard, I think Ken Howard suggests that artists should have a few small ones on the go, you know, your studies, but every now and again do a bigger drawing or a bigger painting. And in this case, using the grid can give you ways to at least tackle that and not be overwhelmed when you take on bigger subjects. Anyway, so I'm really glad to see the work this week, and I hope you found it useful. And I will be here on Monday for my final lesson of this series. So I look forward to seeing you then, and I'll see you soon. Bye.